Hello, I will get going. It's going to be more of a talk about my process during SWA1 rather than showcasing the projects. But here,
Be good to hear your insight.
okay, can you see?
Yep, it looks good.
Great. So, hello, I'm Patrick, one of the winners of SWA1, and I suppose I'm here to share what I've learned building on Story. So, as a brief intro, I have now participated in 2 hackathons in this ecosystem, IP Radar at SWA1 and IP AutoVault at the IRL Story Hack. So this quick pitch will be about that journey to hopefully give some insight on what it takes to build successfully on Story. So one quick preface, do ignore the graphics as this deck was 100% AI generated. So some of the images do not match anything I'm talking about at all, but oh well. So yeah, when I first looked at Story Protocol, my approach kind of was to first understand and scope out what's unique about the ecosystem, what problems I can solve here that can't be solved elsewhere. And instead of spending my time looking at absolutely everything, I tried to get stuck in and form ideas as I go so that once I land on something, I can reduce my scope down to only looking at the docs for like what's relevant to what I'm building. But also as a preface, it's obviously not good to rush into building without understanding the landscape first. As rushing in and getting something wrong and having to bug fix can often end up being more time consuming, as tempting as it is. So once I grasped a reasonable enough understanding of the ecosystem and what I want to build, I reached out to the Story team simply to validate my idea. I'm sure Story will give you plenty of great insight on knowing what exactly is useful to them, what they want to see, what works, and what doesn't already have a bunch of clones. And don't feel bad or reluctant to just reach out. I'm sure Jacob enjoys being pestered. And building on that, I'm sure the team can give you feedback you probably didn't even anticipate and point you towards new ideas and scope. So I'll briefly go over the things I built, merely for the purpose of trying to spark potential inspiration. So the first thing I built was IP Radar. It came directly from gathering an understanding of Story's IP layer and thinking about what utility I felt was lacking. So the idea I landed on here was a sort of visualization layer for Story, both to visualize on-chain relationships and also provide semantic embedding for visual assets. In hindsight, I should really have probably added demos to these slides, but oh well, here we are. We just have a static image that's not related to the product. Anyway, this product was to essentially provide that visual embedding for how similar any given assets are, which I think ties nicely into the purpose and greater utility of Story. And one last thing I'll add is that this product was not so much of a deep integration on the tech side, but I think it was very well aligned in purpose and building on that story as a data layer. Now, the second product I built on Story, which is much more aligned to what I do, is IP AutoVault. I thought of this from scouting the DeFi ecosystem of Story, scoping out where the potential novel yield opportunities are, and integrating with relevant protocols. One thing that I think might be a useful building insight here was some of the protocols I was integrating with didn't really have published contract addresses or ABIs in docs. So I kind of just used a developer-friendly wallet to attempt to sign a transaction in the dApp, use the wallet to grab a snippet of the ABI and see the contract address where the transaction is going to, which kind of will work, and you can replicate that with scripts. But one caveat with this is vulnerable still to things like hook contracts. So if anything involving multi-steps is breaking, the likelihood here is that you're running into one of those. So in that case, just reach out to the protocol you're trying to interact with, and I'm sure the Story team can give them the bump if they're slow to get back to you. So TLDR from my experience building on Story, and often more generally, is first, it's important to understand those core primitives, differences from other chains, and the overarching goals. Know the existing tooling, bridges, scout what dev tools you can use, what ideas or apps already exist, and even make sure to pre-fund your wallets using faucets just so you don't have to run around begging the Story team for testnet tokens. And lastly, read docs. Documentation is your best friend if you feed it to AI, if you're lazy, but then at least have it in your AI's context window as you're building. And here's a practical slide, I guess. So one thing that's practical to keep in mind is to know the submission requirements before you start building. You want your submission to showcase the vision you want to portray from your project. So having to do a pitch or README or something that you only realize you need to do at the deadline is not generally going to portray the quality you want. So without being too redundant with what Nick said at the start, I will add on a couple of things to what I think might give you a competitive edge. One thing, making it specific to story in some way, where either in purpose or technical integration. Next, with bigger and more recent hackathons, I think showing commitment has become more important. So showing off that you're serious about your product, which can come in the form of something like early validation with market research, customer feedback if relevant, which is not even too absurd to get started on even pre-MVP nowadays. And then if you think you're committed to taking your idea beyond the hackathon, as they said at the start, then kind of showing that explicitly, starting any GTM outreach or just getting socials up and running is only ever going to help you show that commitment. Well, this slide is just to say hackathons can be for anyone, even if you want to just build something cool, just to dilute my emphasis on the last few sentences. But yeah, I've yapped enough, so let's wrap this up. So yeah, hopefully that's a good enough job from me. I do believe I was the last person on this schedule, so with Rebecca's consent, people may start to scram.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for presenting that and some really useful advice there. So hopefully, for those of you who are planning on building a technical project in the Buildathon, as opposed to tackling the AI video track, that's some really, really useful advice, especially those of you who didn't participate in Surreal World Assets 1. As Patrick said, he has won 2 story hackathons now. So I'm not sure how many hackathons Story has done in total, but that probably puts him in the top tier for who knows how to win a hackathon on Story. So thank you very much, Patrick, for coming and delivering that. And you are correct. This is the end of our opening ceremony. So thank you everyone who stuck around, especially we've run over the time that we blocked for you, but we've had some really, really interesting talks, and hopefully you're all inspired and ready to get started.